Hi, this is Carol Stimmel in the Engerati studio at European Utility Week 2015. Today I'm joined by three experts in the electric vehicle industry where we'll be discussing the possible dangers or opportunities found in integrating at this pace, at a high rate of pace, EVs into the utility grid. I have Claus, Marten, and Ben. Is it true? Are we finally here? Are we ready for prime time with these vehicles coming onto our grid?
Yes, I think problem is the wrong question. How can we?
I'm an analyst. We try to do that.
How can we integrate electric mobility in the grid? So this is one of the major questions, not the only one. And I think, or we believe, we are on a good way. But in the next 3 or 4 years, it's important to see more EVs on the street. So this is the first thing. Customers has to buy EVs. And the grid perspective is a very important thing. We have to think on that. And our opinion is we need, for that reason, we need intelligent charging infrastructure. Because we need a permanently smart interaction with the charging infrastructure, with the car, and with the grid, but also with the market. And that is the first step we have to start. And maybe some areas of the grid becomes earlier some problems, if we're talking on problems. Other grids don't see them within the next 10 years. It depends on how many cars are in the grid, are there, is there a hotspot of EVs maybe in one street or something. These are all the questions we have to face in reality within the next years.
Sure.
But I think it's not a problem. It's something we have to handle, and I think we can handle that, but only with intelligence in the cars and in the infrastructure and the grid.
Okay, so you're on the opportunity side of the equation,
Yeah,
and you identified one of the biggest concerns that's really been discussed for a number of years are these hotspots or pockets of demand. And because our adoption models, I think, have been challenged, and not because we haven't understood who's going to buy and what the price points are, and then there's been subsidies here and there. Now they're coming. You say we're ready. There may be pockets of demand. What is your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think in Holland we have a slightly different situation, and the EV is heavily subsidized. So there is a lot of plug-in hybrid cars in the Netherlands already. So the curve is steeping.
What is that penetration? Do you have a sense of that yet?
I'm sorry, I don't have figures. I'm very bad at figures, but it's quite. It's more than
it's
expected,
growing
and
it's broad.
rising and still going on.
70,000 cars.
Okay, yeah, thanks for helping. Yeah, so it's quite something. You see them around, and also in the trail of that you see now the full electric vehicles, and charging infrastructure is also popping up. So also in the beginning subsidized, but now you see people when they buy a car, they have also charging equipment at their home, and it's so far no problem. Of course, the outlook is when a lot of EVs are together, then there should be something on the grid, yeah? Because if they all charge at the same time, then theoretically there is a problem.
Right.
So indeed what Claus says is that some smart charging is needed, otherwise the costs for just a charging spot are too high.
Okay.
So you have to do something with that.
Well, we definitely have to talk about the smart charging piece. But I'd like to hear what your perspective is on your general thoughts about disaster or opportunity when we think about integrating. What do you think in terms of that showing up now? Do you believe it? Are you a believer?
I am a believer in electrical driving, but it's not a disaster yet. But I'm not panicking, but it's coming very quickly. And we did some tests with the perspective of 2025. And in that field test we showed that really the light did go out. And because the amount you can have in control by a demand response system or some kind, smart charging system, it's either in the public environment, but you need it after the meter in the households. Yeah. So that's a bigger problem for us as a grid company, because we can't, not really. So from our perspective, well, the cable itself, it's strong enough, but you have to do something. You can't do do nothing, then it's going wrong.
Well, that's so. I guess in some ways it's good the market didn't form as fast as we thought it was going to. You know, there's been sort of peaks of you know, maybe hyper-inflated forecasts that just have failed to materialize, but they look like they are materializing now. And so we have a much more capability now with this concept of smart, but let's talk about smart and data and analytics. From the charging perspective, what is it, can you sort of say what smart means to you? What does that comprise? What do we need to know, and what do we need to be able to do?
Yeah, coming back maybe to his point, this is one example for smartness. You're totally right, and we also did some tests to say where is the problem maybe on the grid, the interaction with the grid, and having a smart infrastructure is not enough, sure. So you need products, you need market mechanisms to allow someone, maybe the DSO or an aggregator or a supplier, who else, to give a signal to the car, to the charging station. Right now, not to charge too much, or please stop charging for half an hour. For the customer, that's important. He needs a benefit for that, because this is part of the case. And to learn that, how can we interact? So the grid, the signal, the supplier, the aggregator, and the car together. This is a part of the smartness. And that's interesting for the customer.
Yeah,
And the consumer, yeah, sure.
itself.
So, and
The most poorly understood piece of the whole puzzle, right?
yeah.
I mean, Marten, what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, I'm coming from the other end. Within the USEF Foundation, we are trying to setting up a market for energetic flexibility. So to set up a marketplace where people who have flexibility in their energy profile can offer that to a market, and that other stakeholders can use this flexibility. And DSOs, TSOs, balance responsible party, they all have interest in this flexibility, and EVs are a perfect source of flexibility. It's a driving battery, so you can charge it, discharge it, go to a different place. So it's really, in our view, an ingredient, a source of flexibility which we should have. Of course, there is also a customer and the driver, and his needs and his intention to drive to a specific place should always be respected. So there is the challenge to balance this, the need of the driver and using the extra flexibility and to feed it to the system and create value with that.
So I'm hearing two things in this conversation. I'm not sure which way I want to go yet, but I'm hearing about technical flexibility and human flexibility, right? So, and what are the constructs to help sort of direct and nudge that human flexibility? But we started out this conversation talking about auto manufacturers jumping into the EV fray now. Marten, you brought up a point which I've been curious about for a long time, which is the charging and discharging and sort of this full vehicle to grid integration. And I have often wondered how that was going to affect warranties, battery warranties. I mean, how far out are we in terms of the companies working in this space, the grid operators themselves, the auto manufacturers, and the consumers? Are we coming together effectively enough to determine what the requirements are, and if we are going to be able to actually do these things in short order? What do you think?
Well, also the same test, we did a lot of work together with Mercedes and Daimler, and they were very fond in the kind of test we're doing, because it's kind of flexibility versus complexity. You can make a very complex system but have a very large flexibility in the system itself, but with less complex system, like don't charge between 6 and 8. It could be a standard default something. Maybe there are no problems anymore. So it's finding a way how to make a balance between flexibility and complexity. And car manufacturers are also thinking on that line. What should they do to prevent damage to grids or?
So they need to see what the other problems are outside of building a good car. Okay, so that's what I was wondering. And so obviously you're seeing this from another side. What is your perspective on, are the right people coming to the table to get the right technology, and then also to pull this kind of the human piece into it?
So I think we talked about customers, and there are different use cases. And now, or the last years, we try to develop together use cases with the car manufacturers, with the suppliers, with the mobility providers, with the hardware companies, and so on. Because first, everybody needs a business case. Without a business case, it's not very interesting to spend money into something. And from a use case perspective, we're coming close together, because from a customer has one use case, and he needs a couple of companies who interact together. So, for example, public charging is something totally different than home charging. Fast charging is another use case, because I have other needs. So, but in general, the customer wants to have all of them. So if I want to integrate my EV in my home charging, I have suddenly a connection with a smart home system, maybe with a PV, with a battery. I have suddenly a very hard interaction with the grid operator and with the supplier, maybe with another provider. And for the public charging, I have different needs. There is only maybe a connection with my mobility provider. And so I think we have to think more in use cases. Or we did it in the last years, and then suddenly there is a case and business models coming out of that.
Okay. Yeah, so that's. I'm wondering, you're the one that got us into this conversation, really, sort of like pushing back the flexibility piece, but also kind of spinning out a little bit of a broader vision, which we've heard for a while. But so, from a more practical, can you explain to me how you sort of see us stepping towards that vision? What are the pieces we need to start seeing effect happening?
I think first of all, the car manufacturer should make a good car with enough battery capacity to drive to, well, at least 400 or 500 kilometers or something like that. And it should open the car for smart charging. And just that, and making sure that whenever there is a signal that it is taken in, and that the charging process itself is done by the car. So the car manufacturer is the boss over the battery.
Right.
And I think there is a need for another party operating this smart charging process. We call that an aggregator. And he has to take care of the needs of the customer. He maybe knows the schedule of the customer or whatever.
Do these aggregators exist?
There can be an app.
Yeah, are there aggregators
I think
now?
the mobility service companies that are now offering these charging services, they can take that role as well. So just now they're doing the administrative thing about charging in public, etc. But they can also do it in a more smart way. So they can offer smart charging services or any e-mobility services to their customers. And they are then in the position to make the connection to the grid world, to talk about energy volumes, flexibility, etc. Because that's too complex for the car manufacturers, and also it's a burden for the prosumer, for the customer.
Okay,
so
well,
there should be an intermediary role, making a bridge from the mobility world to the energy world.
Okay,
and I
great.
think they are perfectly suited for that.
Yes. All right. So that's so we're talking about kind of the energy services management for. I don't think I don't know if that's a real phrase, but it's where we're going, right? I'm hearing wherever I go, I hear a lot of talk about this. Even in a room full of solar PV integrators, we're talking about the same topic. So we're getting back to the topic that you first raised, which is the human component. And one of the challenges in kind of forecasting this market has always been a very poor understanding of EV adoption, and it's turned out, I think, to be a very regional set of influences, including taste in automobiles. So, some of us, we want the Tesla, we want the speed, and there's even been EV manufacturers that falsify the sound of the engine, revving, because people need that. And then, obviously the urban driving scape is very, very different than a more rural one. So is that something that you think is true? And if that is true, if that is part of the adoption taste, really, how do we address that? I mean, how do we promote EVs when it seems to be such a sort of finicky market?
for a lot of people, EV is still far away because it's too expensive and hard to.
The individual consumers as opposed to fleet. Yeah.
What we see if you have small groups of people with car sharing programs, like an electrical vehicle car sharing program, it will work, and that is growing, and you see it in Amsterdam. That's a famous spot for car sharing.
Where you get the Tesla cab, right?
The Tesla cab, but it's not for sharing, though. Kind of. No, but you have free cars, let's say, if you're a member, then you can get the car. But you see it in little groups, like street cars. A few houses together have one electrical vehicle as their second car. And I think that's the more growing market. Smaller electrical vehicles, because of the range you can ride with it. It's getting better, but it's not there yet.
It's not there.
So I can add two things on that. Yes. First of all, I don't think we have to tell the car manufacturers how to sell emotions.
They're good at that.
They know exactly, and that's fine. So the situation with Tesla, I think at the moment is because they were an early adapter. They have a good-looking car, and that's the situation why many people are buying that car. In the national platform for electric mobility in Germany, we are close to all the German car manufacturers, and they, at the moment, I think they have more than 16 different EVs on the market. So it's not a question of an EV or something right now.
Right.
But we recognized as well as you did, information is very important. So even if you have a project with 10 or 20 EVs and they're driving around, you have to bring the people to test and feel. Yeah. Look, do you want to step into an EV? Do you want to drive? Oh, that's like a normal car.
Right.
Oh, look how fast.
Right.
Look, they are not noisy. And so this is something you need more. And this is, I think, also a job of the car manufacturers right now to sell these cars, to bring them to the people. Car sharing and all the other things, they will help us to foster the market, and they are part of a new understanding of mobility. But at the end, we don't have to convince the people. We just have to show them the cars and let them feel how EVs are like.
Right.
I think my feeling is, whoever you talk who has driven an electric car, he is in favor of that. He will not buy a traditional car anymore.
Oh yeah, but see, it used to be the anxiety. There was a lot of anxiety about getting dumped on the road, and range anxiety, right? So
exactly.
Especially in the United States.
It is there. It is still there.
But that's something just in the heads of the people, because for example, in Germany, the study says. Up to 70% of the people are driving during the day not more than 30 kilometers. Mm-hmm. So it's not really the situation.
It's a feeling, though. You brought up the feelings, right?
Absolutely. And for that reason, maybe we need the public charging infrastructure to show the people, don't worry.
Yeah, well,
around the next 1 or 2 kilometers.
Look at where you want to charge, because if you're working at a factory and the car is there for 8 hours, just you need charge over there.
No problem.
So, but that's a mind shift for people.
And even I live in the city of Groningen, and two times a week I drive to Arnhem. I pass 4 fast charging stations, and they are not always occupied. So my range anxiety would be not there anymore.
Right.
So there is infrastructure, there is a way to go when I'm low in battery. So I think that can be easily solved by rolling out a highway fast charging.
Yeah, and it is one of these sort of regional things, because in the United States, I mean, we really do have relationships with our cars. Mm-hmm. And I do live in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So
of course.
I would be stranded, without. And I use my vehicle to move my wood around to get to my house. So that's why I think it's very important to understand these regional influences. But it is a feeling. One of the things that we've been talking about across the industry, and EVs are a big part of this, is how do we create really energy experiences, right? And a piece of that is integrating with the life stream of the human being. So we have that feeling, we already have anxiety, it's a new kind of product. We do have relationships with our vehicles, they get us to work, they move our families around. So what are the services, and let's start with you, Ben. What are the services you see that are going to be important in terms of integrating the EV into the consumer's life stream?
I think when you can connect it to some kind of better living environment, then it's more adoptable. Like, I'm doing this because the environment will be better. We all know, but if you really can connect it, like measurement of air quality or something, then I think you can change something. And
we've run up against that a lot. You know, that's what the behavioral energy efficiency emphasis is about. So it's tough. That's very tough. But it sounds like you believe that an automobile makes this more tangible for the consumer than maybe the heat in their home, a comfort where it's a comfort
I think so,
issue.
because they know the exhaust pipe isn't too good for the environment. So if it's an electrical one, hey, you don't have an exhaust pipe. So I think when you relate these two things, just in a simple way, people understand, oh wait, there is another way.
It's a much more natural relationship.
Huh?
Yeah. Well, what do you? Does this fit the vision you've introduced us to?
Yeah, I would say charging at home with your own solar is a thing that people would like, and that could be one of the use cases. And I think some manufacturers also take this service with their car selling. So I think that's a good way to start and to make people really feel green.
Right. Do you agree? You've talked quite a bit about use cases today.
I'm talking. Yeah, I agree. But the question is, you ask services or use cases?
Yeah, that's right.
So it depends on the person's situation of the customer at the end. So maybe one service can be the car should be integrated into the house. So there should be a connection, for example, with the smart home system and the car automatically. The charging process should be started automatically in the house. So this is kind of a service. I'm coming home, I plug in my car, and maybe I did I filled one time in my parameters in an app or something, but then it runs totally automatically. Yeah. That's very important service for the customer. Another service maybe from a car manufacturer is you bought an EV, and we know right today for traveling to a holiday, we give you the chance to switch your car for 2 weeks for free. Maybe you can have another car, because we know mobility is important for you, and an EV today is maybe not the perfect car for traveling 800 or 1,000 kilometers, but we offer you something. This is another service, and I think so we see hundreds of different services, but we don't know which one are the best, but that's part of the business.
Right.
The people don't worry about their transportation right now, and with an electrical vehicle, they don't want to worry again. Yeah. So if you can take out that worry, maybe with a holiday car or something.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a nice segue. We only have a few minutes left here. Thank you. This has been a really great discussion. So let's start with asking you to finish this thought. So. What can we do? What do we need to be doing in the short term, tactically at this point, to make sure that our integration goes well, so that we don't trade off any of our strategic benefits, where we want to be in the long run? Do you have any closing thoughts on that for us?
Well, I can't predict the future, and I think we can. If we go on and do nothing, it's going wrong. So we have to find ways, solutions, smart solutions, to get into control, but not too much. That's what I try to say, because people don't want the fuss about it. They just want to load their car. And I like your idea of, maybe one time fill in their parameters of loading schedule, and that's it. And then it should run.
So build trust.
Build trust.
It's a process.
Trust and comfort.
I think so. I agree.
What is your closing thought on that, Marten?
Well, setting up a good charging infrastructure is crucial. If you can only charge at home or at your company, and you cannot use your car for something else. So I think building a good infrastructure is crucial, and by doing that, you have to implement smart charging, otherwise your grid investments will be too high. So smart charging is also crucial.
So let's build trust, let's move quickly, and I would imagine you would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, one thing we haven't touched before really is the integration of EVs and renewable energies. So I think we need that link, and we can do that with smartness, with combination of different factors to help. This is good for the grid, this is good for the society, and this is good for the environment, and good for the customers, because if he understands with my EV, I can maybe charge green energy, for example, or I can use my own PV, or I can combine my own PV with my car. That's something, it's very important. This is our opinion, and so we have to build on that also.
Okay, great. I want to thank you guys very much for joining us today. It's been a really good discussion, and we've talked about a lot of different things, the technology piece and the human piece, which are both so important to work together. So Claus, Marten, and Ben, thanks again so much. This is Carol Stimmel in the Engerati studio. Thanks.